There are a couple of questions here regarding this. I'm going to combine two of them. How are we securing the borders of Kansas against drugs and sex trafficking? And is Kansas deporting illegals at a significant rate now?
Yeah. So first of all, I'd like to protect the borders of Kansas from Oklahoma, but no. Sorry, I had to say that. In addition to being the chairman of the Elections Committee, I'm also the chairman of the Joint Kansas Security Committee, which is a committee that meets between the Congress between the Senate and the House to do policy on security. And two big things that we are constantly talking about is human trafficking and fentanyl. Try to get through this, not get emotional, but we have a terrible fentanyl problem in Leavenworth, across the state, but in Leavenworth, I mean, it really hits home for me. We have about, depends on the year, between 30 and 50 overdoses, and about a dozen of those are fatalities every year. And the fentanyl's getting worse. We had this last committee hearing, Joint Security Committee hearing, we had the KBI, we actually did it at the KBI lab at Washburn. We had KBI there and the state troopers. They told us that they are seizing across the state enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in the state of Kansas 5 times over. And that's what they're seizing. So imagine what's out there on the streets right now. I'm shocked that our overdose numbers aren't worse. I've been doing a lot of stuff in the legislature on this. Last year, or 3 years ago, I passed an expansion of the Good Samaritan law, so that, what's happening is, 4 guys are doing drugs, and they're usually, they don't know they're doing fentanyl. They think they're taking an Oxycontin, or they think they're taking a Percocet, and it's actually fentanyl. And one of them takes it and they overdose, and the rest of them just split because they don't want to get in trouble. Well, this Good Samaritan law says if you call the police and you call paramedics and you stay on the scene, we're not going to arrest you for your pill, because we want that person to have a second chance. Some other stuff we've done. Last year I removed all the barriers for police to carry naloxone, because our laws were old. They just hadn't kept up with fentanyl. So there were all these barriers to law enforcement carrying naloxone. And a lot of them were doing it anyways, because the need is the need. But you're supposed to, has to be administered by a doctor. There's all these weird things. Naloxone's Narcan. It's like if somebody ODs, just shoot it in their nose, and it counteracts the effects of fentanyl and saves them. This year I've got 2 bills. One of them, once the police did it, once the police got it, they said, well, this stuff has an expiration date of 3 years, and so it's really expensive. We got to keep replacing the stock. Well, I did some research, and it turns out this crap lasts forever. There are studies where people took 30-year-old Narcan and it saved their life. So it lasts forever. So it basically allows them to ignore the expiration date. But this is my biggest push, and I'm going to fight like the third monkey trying to get on the ark to get this passed. Naloxone, Narcan in our schools. So if there's an OD in the schools, because it's happening, you're just not hearing about it. If a dozen people died in being run over by cars at a corner in Leavenworth, it would be all over the front page of the paper, and people would be standing on the lawns in City Hall demanding action. But for some reason, 12 people dying of a drug they didn't know they were taking when they took it doesn't even make the paper. And I don't understand that. And it's happening in our schools. Kids are dying in our schools, or ODing in our schools. So it requires them to carry Narcan. It requires fentanyl education. So that's the one that I think is really, really important, because I'll just end with the story. I don't mean to drag everybody down, but I'm going to try to get through this one without getting emotional. I had a friend. His name's Andy Burris. And Andy's an Air Force veteran, lives in Lansing. He's just outside my district, but I know him. And his son got on Snapchat, and he bought what he thought was a Percocet. The guy came at 2 in the morning, took $15, gave Cruz, Andy's son, a Percocet. Cruz was having his first drug experiment, and he wanted to share it with his friends. So he called on FaceTime in his room at night, 2 in the morning, got his friends on FaceTime, took a Percocet that was actually fentanyl, and died right in front of his friends. And his friends are 15 too, you know, stupid kids. And they're afraid they're going to get in trouble or they're going to get him in trouble. So they didn't call his mom and dad. They called his sister, who of course is dead asleep at 3 in the morning. And so his mom comes in the next morning to wake him up for school and finds her son dead. That story is, you know, there's like 2,000 people have OD'd in the state of Kansas. Probably 90% of them have a story like that. It's not drug addicts, you know, that are shooting up in a corner and one of them ODs. That does happen, but 90% of the people who are dying from fentanyl don't even know they're dying from fentanyl. That's why people don't call it, the advocates don't call it fentanyl overdose, they call it fentanyl poisoning. Because overdose means I took something and I took too much of it knowing I was taking it. Poisoning means I took something and it had something in it I didn't know about and it killed me. So, on human trafficking, I'm sorry, I got on a tangent there. Human trafficking, we've had some great legislation. Carrie Barth and Rebecca Schmoy are two champions on this in the House. Unfortunately, Carrie Barth has moved on, but she's got a great replacement. So there is a federal law on human smuggling, not trafficking, smuggling, moving somebody from place to place for the purpose of then selling their labor or selling their bodies or whatever. But there's no state law. And you remember back when Joe Biden was president, he wasn't stopping nothing. And so our state troopers or our sheriff's departments would stop a U-Haul, open the back of it, and there'd be like 15 illegals in there, and all they could do is give them a ticket for not wearing a seatbelt. Because there was no state law on human smuggling, and if they called ICE, ICE wasn't allowed to respond. So they passed a law that makes human smuggling a crime so that we can rescue those people. It's not about, we're not going to arrest them, we're going to get them and make sure that they're not sold into human slavery anymore. Now, if they're illegal, but they shouldn't be trafficked anyways. They're still human beings. But now we've got ICE. We've got ICE actually working with law enforcement here in the state of Kansas. We've got a no sanctuary city, no sanctuary county, no sanctuary state law here. The Attorney General and Tony Mativi, the KBI director, are very, very active working with ICE. But I'll just tell you, there are, this whole 2 million person flood of illegal aliens, Joe Biden wasn't sending them to Kansas on Biden Air. He was sending them to California, he was sending them to New York, he was sending them to Minnesota. And the reason he was sending them there is because he's trying to redo the census so that they have all the Congress people, and that when reapportionment happens, they'll have majorities in the House and they'll have more in the Electoral College. I hear all the time about, oh, non-citizens are voting. Well, yes, we found some non-citizens are voting. But the reason he was shipping them here wasn't so they could vote. Now in California, there's no voter ID, so they probably are voting. But the reason he shipped them here is for the census, so they could change reapportionment, so they could change the Electoral College map, so that no Republican could ever win president again. And so they need to go. They need to go. And we're cooperating with ICE here. We are deporting people, but Kansas ain't the problem. Kansas ain't where they all went. They all went to the blue states.